Human greed has for generations led to war, misery, and death. Billions of lives have been lost. A struggle of money and power has dominated over humanity. Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, and Napoleon Bonaparte have been known for their brutality, their thirst for blood, and their ability to rule the world. But of all these generals, of all these leaders, none will ever be known for making the world a better place. None will ever be known for having an impact on this planet like a great American general once did. None will ever be known better than the great General George Marshall. George Catlett Marshall was born on December 31, 1880 in Uniontown, Pennsylvania. His father was a prosperous coal merchant who ran into rough financial times when young George attended the Virginia Military Institute. While at VMI, Marshall struggled at first, but graduated as senior captain of the Corps of Cadets in 1901. Following graduation, Marshall received his commission as second lieutenant of infantry in February of 1902 and embarked for 18 months of service in the Philippines. Marshall early developed the rigid self-discipline, the habits of study, and the attributes of command that eventually brought him to the top of the world. Men who served under him spoke of his quiet self-confidence, his humble manner, his diplomatic attitudes, and his inspirational charisma. With a seemingly distant personality, many saw Marshall as rather cold, but he had a fierce temper held under careful control with great affection and warmth for those close to him. After his service in the Philippines, Marshall advanced steadily through the ranks and became General of the Army in December of 1944. In World War I, he served as Chief of Operations of the First Army during the Meuse-Argonne Offensive in 1918, and after the war he served for 5 years as aide to General John J. Pershing. Marshall was sworn in as Chief of Staff of the United States Army on September 1, 1939. For the next 6 years, Marshall directed the raising of new divisions, the training of troops, the development of new weapons, equipment, and the selection of top commanders. When he entered office, the U.S. forces consisted of fewer than 200,000 officers and men. Under his direction, it expanded to well over 8 million. Marshall raised and equipped the largest ground and air force in the history of the United States, a feat that earned him the honor of the Organizer of Victory from British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. As a representative of the U.S. Joint Chief of Staff at the international conferences in Casablanca, Washington, D.C., Quebec, Cairo, and Tehran, Marshall led the fight for an Allied drive on German forces across the English Channel in opposition to the so-called Mediterranean strategy of the British. So valuable was his service to President Franklin D. Roosevelt that he was kept on at the Joint Chief of Staff in Washington while command over the cross-channel invasion was given to General Dwight D. Eisenhower. Following his resignation as Chief of Staff on November 21, 1945, and the American victory, George Marshall, on behalf of President Truman, set off to China in an attempt to mediate their civil war. Though his efforts were unsuccessful, in 1947 he was appointed as Secretary of State, and while Marshall had been a very important figure in American efforts during World War I and World War II, his achievement as Secretary of State will be remembered forever.
We have given much aid to the impoverished peoples of Europe on simple humanitarian grounds. But as a countermeasure against the attempt by the Soviet Union to communize Europe, the American people saw the necessity for cooperating with the non-communist countries in a comprehensive, bipartisan European recovery program, passed by Congress and here being signed by President Truman. This program, known also as the Marshall Plan, is designed to afford eligible nations that margin of help in credit and materials which they need to bring their overall economy back to health. Secretary of State Marshall, in placing the plan before Congress, stated,
"Why must the United States carry so great a load in helping Europe? The answer is simple. The United States is the only country in the world today which has the economic power and productivity to furnish the needed assistance. The 6 1/8 billion proposed for the first 15 months is less than a single month's charge of the war. To be quite clear, this unprecedented endeavor of the new world to help the old is neither sure nor easy. It is a calculated risk. It is a difficult program. and you know far better than I do, the political difficulties involved in this program. But there's no doubt whatever in my mind that if we decide to do this thing, we can do it successfully. And there's also no doubt in my mind that the whole world hangs in the balance as to what it is to be.
Marshall also initiated discussions that led to the formation of NATO, and during his time as Secretary of State, he officially recognized Israel. And finally, in 1950, at the age of 70, Marshall was named Secretary of Defense as he helped prepare the armed forces for the Korean War. After 1951, Marshall remained on the active duty list as the highest-ranking general of the Army available for consultation by the government. In 1953, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in recognition for his contributions to the economic rehabilitation of Europe after World War II and his efforts to promote world peace and understanding. It was he who had mobilized, modernized, and made the millions of U.S. troops the most feared and respected military on earth, earning him the title of Arsenal of Democracy. General George Catlett Marshall's achievements as General, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, and U.S. diplomat will always be remembered in the highest regard. He reshaped the American military, he rebuilt Europe, he established the United States as a world superpower, and he will go down in history as the one man, the only man, to be known as the General of Peace. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you General George Marshall, the most interesting man in the world.